Hey, it's Adam Steele and Mike Martin back with another episode of the Field to Table Processing Series. Today we're going to be talking about grinding, stuffing sausages, mixing sausages, and running smokers to smoke sausages. Lots of stuff to cover, so we're going to be going through the equipment used, the process of how to turn ground meat or how to grind meat and turn that ground meat into sausages, and then the different kinds of casings we're going to be using, and after that the different kinds of smoking, cold smoking versus hot smoking, and kind of some of the steps involved in that. So hope you guys enjoy, and now we'll talk about the equipment that we're going to be using. So here we have the number 8 grinder from Weston and the 7-pound stuffing unit. Now the grinders do come with attachments that will stuff sausages. So you have your smaller size for breakfast links, snack sticks, hot dogs, things like that. And then you have up to your larger size for your 1 and 2 pound bulk bags, summer sausages, bologna, things like that. So everything in between. So grinder consists of several parts. Motor housing, obviously. That's where all the magic happens per se. Okay, so we got our motor and housing. We're going to attach the head with the throat up. Tighten down our screw there. So the next piece that's going to go in, this is called the auger, or some people call it the worm. You can see it's geared, so that's just going to slip right in there like that. Your knife. So you want to make sure that these edges face out. And then you have your plates or your die, and they're a few different sizes, and you can see they're going to be written right there on the side. 7 mil, 4.5 mil, and you can see that's for the size number 8 grinder. So there's going to be a notch in these. You're going to match the notches up with the notch on your grinder and just slip that right on top. And then from there, you can take your ring nut and tighten. We're going to get more into plate size and that later when we talk about grinding and sausage stuffing. It's the hopper or tray. It's going to go right on top there. And then this is your stomper. And that's just used to push everything down your throat. So that's your grinder. All right, so here we have our 7-pound stuffer. See the hopper right there, and all your meat's going to go in there. It's going to get pushed through by your plunger. O-ring right there, and if you go down, there's a little air valve that lets your air out the top. Pressure release so you don't have meat spewed everywhere. So important parts there, it's just a little spring. So this is your pressure release valve. It's just a simple spring operated valve that screws into the top. You want to leave a little room there so your air can get out as you're screwing down your plunger to stuff your sausages. That's just operated by a simple little crank. So meat goes in. same kind of diameter funnels from your small casings for snack sticks, hot dogs, breakfast links, to larger casings, bratwurst, things like that, and then you get up to your knockwursts and larger diameter regular sausages, and these are for your largest diameter. So again, that's just going to slip on the front. It's hand tight. There's your stuffer. So casings, depending on how you get them, will either come dry, pre-tubed. You may get them in buckets, wet. If you don't want to order them online, if you have someplace local that makes their own sausages and you don't need that much, a lot of times you can walk in there and ask them, and they'll be willing to give. Just tell them you need enough to make 5 or 10 pounds, and I found that works pretty well. The two major types of casings are a hog casing and a sheep or lamb casing. These are pre-tubed casings. This would be a sheep or lamb casing. You see it's a smaller diameter. And this would be the hog casing. You can see that's a larger diameter. So these are pre-rinsed, pre-tubed, dried casings that come in large packs. And I can just keep these stored like this. It just makes sure they stay salted. I go through a lot. If I didn't, I would vacuum seal these. But I'll go through these in a week or two. So I just keep them like this. About a half hour to an hour before you use them, you're going to want to soak them in water, make them a little more pliable and easy to work with. So you can see there's your sheep casing, smaller diameter, and that'll be your hog casing, the larger diameter. So we're going to get more into that a little bit later. But that's just an introduction to the parts and pieces for grinding and sausage stuffing. So when you're getting your fat and your meat ready for your grinder, it's important to note the size of your throat. And when you're cutting it, you want to make sure you can easily drop the pieces in to the throat of your grinder. And as you can see, this fat is really cold. It's been in the freezer. A lot of times to get your ratios correct, you can use various different methods. I like pork fat. It's the most neutral, cleanest tasting. You want a minimum of 20%. I tend to lean towards 30%. Some emulsified sausages will go even higher than that. But if you don't have a good source of just unsalted pork fat, pork butts work well at about a 50-50 ratio. Pork bellies, maybe a 60-40 or 70-30 ratio to cut with your meat. So we've got this cubed up. We're going to go ahead and throw that in the grinder. Anytime you're grinding, you want to keep everything as cold as possible. So if you can, keep your head, your auger, your blade, and your dies in the freezer. That'll just give you every advantage over combating heat, because the grinder and the gears, they're going to generate a lot of heat as they're turning, and that fat will start to render out pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and preload. So there's something already down there. Again, that just keeps from generating heat, that blade and that plate. and then we can go ahead and load as much as we can into the tray right here. All right, so we got approximately 70-30 lean to fat ratio here, so we're ready to start mixing up our sausage. This is a 25-pound batch. I'm going to use about 2 ounces of water, 2-3 ounces of water per pound of meat. Doesn't have to be water. Wine, beer, any liquid you want to use, just as long as it's really cold. The whole point of mixing here is to extract myosin, which binds the meat together. It's the difference between crumbly hamburger texture versus that smooth, squeaky sausage texture that's going to hold moisture that you're looking for. So as you can see now, it's really not sticking to our hand, kind of going right through. So the mixing process here is to develop myosin into what's called the bind. Really important step. So we're going to add a little bit of water, and some people like to mix their seasonings with water ahead of time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on where I'm at with everything today. A little bit more water, and a little bit more seasoning. I'm going to start to mix. Being really diligent to get all the corners, flipping everything around. Mix it really good. And then I'm just going to keep adding seasoning and water. I'm not going to add all my water at once, but I am going to try to get all my seasoning in there as soon as I can. And you can see right now it's really liquidy, really soupy. It's not crumbly, but there's still no bind. It's not sticking to anything yet. So we're just going to develop that, run it through our hands. It should be cold. Your hands should really hurt when you're doing this after a couple minutes. So we've been mixing for a while. Hands are cold. And you can see, if you squeeze it through, it's just starting to develop that bind, starting to stick to my hand a little bit more. So we're just going to keep on mixing. All right, so now you can see after we mixed a little bit more, it's really starting to stick to our hands. You can see it become really stringy. So that's a good sign that myosin starting to get a good extraction and you're getting a good bind. So I'm just going to mix just a couple more minutes and then we're going to load it into the stuffer. Alright, so right now I've got a little bit of a sheet casing, and it can be really tough to find the opening on these, but if you can get a little bit of water in there, it's kind of going to help you open that up a little bit. It's also going to clean the outside, so you can run underneath the faucet. These are pre-flushed, so we don't have to worry about that, and the opening is pretty easy to find once you get in there. So you're just going to peel it apart, look for that opening, and again, it can be really tough, but that opening is going to go right on the outside of your horn, and you're just going to gently thread that casing on there. So before you load up, now is a good time to check and take a taste of the sausage you made. So we're just going to make a little patty and go over and throw it in a hot pan. So anytime you're making sausage, it's always a good idea. Less is more. You can always add more seasoning and spice. But if you go along and you're tasting and you're cooking your patties, to check the texture, check the bind, check the seasoning, you can adjust it before it ever goes into a casing. So I like to spray down the inside of my hopper with some non-stick spray. I like to work with really wet hands, so I'll wash my hands and just leave them wet. Makes it a lot easier when you're loading this thing. Your hands don't stick, so you want to make sure you get all the air pockets out. So I'm going to pack it in there really good. I like to get about a grapefruit or softball size piece, throw it in, so I know it's getting all that air out. You don't want to overload it or it'll start coming out the edges. So you can see after you get your casing on, as you're loading the sausages, you're going to get a little air. That can make it easier to load your casing, as it's going to stretch out the casing a bit and open it up along the way. As well as the first little bit of sausage coming out is going to help to lubricate that casing going on. But you do want to make sure you get all the air out of your casing before you tie the end off. And now we're going to stuff the sausage. It's really a three-handed job. So one hand's cranking while the other hand is kind of gently squeezing, making sure the casing is it's trying to stay on the horn, but you want it to just come off when it has to. That ensures a nice tight stuff. And as the sausage comes off, we're going to go ahead and start to spiral it out just to save space and make it a little easier to deal with. If you ever get a spot that you kind of lose the stuff on, that's okay. If you're going to link it, that'll kind of come out in the end. But you can, a lot like milky and udder, you can just take and gently kind of squeeze that incrementally down and then push some of that casing back on to get it tightened up again. So we're just going to continue as we can, watching for any holes, making sure we continually push that casing down. Try to be consistent with getting the twists out. Again, this is the smaller diameter sheep casing. These are going to end up going on the smoker and becoming snack sticks. So when you're working with sausage, it can be pretty slippery. I like to keep a towel, wet towel, folded up on the edge of the table. That way it kind of keeps it, if you have to do it over a large area, it'll keep it from slipping off the edge. Because once one little piece slips off the edge, that whole thing is going to go down. So you really want to be careful, mind it when you're making long rolls like this, which you don't have to do. I mean, you can obviously cut this into smaller lengths, but if you can't spiral it, even if you can, definitely a good tip for sausage making is keeping that towel in front of you, like that wet towel in front of you, and then a dry towel on your apron, because you're going to absorb a lot of water as well. So there's a couple ways you can tell how much you have left, if you're trying to judge how much casing to put on, by the height of your shaft here, and then by the temperature gradient. You can kind of see that colder meat is throwing a little condensation on the outside, whereas the rest, it's dry. So if you're wondering how much you have in there, that's a good way to tell. So we're right about right there. Okay. So when you're linking sausages, I like to keep in mind what kind of packaging I'm going to be using and an end result to kind of determine my length of sausage. So I'll use three different widths of packaging. The smaller one will be for your breakfast links. The medium size one for your regular sausages, larger diameter, and then these larger packages I'll use for summer sausages and some of the larger smoked links. So with that in mind, I like to have a consistent measuring system. Fortunately, this table, the length of the bricks is exactly where I want them. So I took my packaging size, the length of the brick, and kind of measured against my hand. So I kind of know about where all my links are going to be. So to keep them consistent, take a pinch, fold it over, pinch again, and now you can take that and roll it, spin it away from you. Do the same thing here. Take one, skip it, make a pinch, twist it away from me. One link, another one, pinch, twist, measure, pinch, twist. And if you end up with an odd one on the end, you would take it and twist it the opposite direction that you've been doing the rest of them to get it to hold. All right, so again, keeping packaging size in mind, we just did some of the larger diameter links that are going to be your normal size sausages, and now we'll do some of the breakfast links. Smaller diameter sheep casing, I like to measure about a middle finger length. Same thing, pinch, twist, measure, pinch, twist, measure, twist it opposite because there's only a short one there at the end. So that would be your smaller breakfast leg. So before sausages hit the smoker, you're going to need to get a little bit of air movement on them so they dry out on the outside. That way the smoke will adhere, they'll get a little bit tacky. That'll also let your cure start to go to work on these. It's really important to have cure number 1 going through the temperature danger zone as it's known. So you can see this one's a little wet. We just made these. These are the smaller sheep casings, and these are the larger hog casings. These have hung and are ready to go on the smoker, and these will hang next. And this is just in a cool, dry spot in my pantry with a little fan blowing on it to keep the air going. I try to keep them in here for no more than a couple hours, just so they slowly come up to temperature. And generally, when they hit the smoker, they're between 100 and 120. So that's something, again, your smoker comes up to temp very slowly. And once these go in, you'll just continue to raise that temperature incrementally. Alright, so there's 2 main kinds of smoking, cold smoking and hot smoking. Cold smoking, as the name implies, obviously, is considered continuous smoking. Generally under 86 degrees is the accepted maximum, and it's just a thin stream of smoke. So we're not going to talk too much about cold smoking today, but that's one method that you can employ. These are a couple slabs of pork belly that have been cured and are being smoked right now, cold smoked over about the course of a week, into slabs of bacon. So that's a cold smoking technique. It's good for fish, some cured products, but it's just it's one of the oldest known preservation methods, is salt and indirect cold smoke. You can use pretty much anything as a smoker or a cold smoker. You want to make sure that there's no galvanized on the metal. This is an old stainless steel file cabinet. I do some hot smoking in this also, but this is mainly my cold smoker. Works great. Alright, so now we're going to talk a little bit about hot smoking. Just got this smoker loaded up for the day, or afternoon, I guess. It's going to take quite a while. These won't take as long, but the hams are going to be there for a good bit. I like to use a mix of hickory and oak. So unlike cold smoking, as the name implies, hot smoking is done at hotter temperatures. There is a medium smoking or warm smoking, which occurs in the danger zone. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about smoking that starts above 145 degrees for its majority of the time, and we're looking for an internal temperature of 155 degrees minimum on these. Anything over 220, 225 isn't going to be considered smoking anymore. It's going to be considered barbecuing, roasting. That's a whole other argument conversation for later. So I got a good fire going here. Chunk and chips. Spread those out a little bit. Basically, we're going to cut off a lot of the oxygen to our fire. Let the coals kind of die. Keep a good eye on our temperature while they take a nice little smoke nap for a while. And then we're getting these ready, because once the hams hang for a little bit, we're going to smoke them on these 2 horizontal grills. So there's vertical smoking, horizontal smoking. I like to do a lot of my smoking vertical, just based on what I do: summer sausages, snack sticks, I just like the result a lot better. But for roasts and larger cuts like the hams, after they form their shape a little bit, I like to finish them off on the horizontal smoke. All right, so we talked a little bit about the differences between cold smoking and hot smoking. Cold smoking better suited for fish. Um, Shorter times, unless you're using cure number one, in which case you could do it for much longer times. I cold smoke my bacon for overnight for a week with rests during the day. Hot smoking is generally going to be a lot quicker. You're looking at temperatures over 145 degrees. That's out of the danger zone. A lot of sausages, specifically when you get into more detailed types, you're going to do an incremental smoking where you're going to start your smoke at a certain temperature to just evacuate your smoker of any oxygen. Then you're going to be hanging your dried sausages in there and slowly raising. That's way the outside temperature can dry slowly without trapping that moisture inside and rendering the fat. If you cook the outside too quickly, you're going to have a hard outside. Fat on the inside can render, and it can lead to all sorts of problems. So you want to bring your temperature up gradually with an ending point of no more than 220 degrees, 225 degrees. After that, you're not technically smoking anymore. So what we're doing here, there's a few reasons we smoke. Preservation, color, and flavor. So it just depends on what kind of application, what end product you're looking for as to what kind of smoke you're going to apply. So your sausage has reached its internal temperature and it's time to take it off. What I like to do is immediately after it comes off, I like to spray it down with cold running water for 5 minutes and get the internal temperature under 100 degrees as quickly as you can. So a lot of times that, rinse with cold water, soak it in an ice bath. That's going to keep your casing nice and tight and give you that nice snap you're looking for in the sausage. It's also food safety protocol in general. You want to cool that stuff as rapidly as possible. All right. So a couple things to take note of. The size of your grind is going to have an effect on your end product. So a few kinds of plates here, different sizes. This is a 10 millimeter or what's called a coarse die. This is used for hamburger, chili grind, some people call it. Hamburger generally will get ground twice through one of these. You have your medium die, 7 mil. This is typically your everyday user. It'll go through this one time for most sausages you're going to make. And then lastly, we have your fine plate, 4.5 mil. This is for if you're doing emulsifications. You can do what's called the progressive grind, where you start here, grind it twice, and then you grind it through this one 2 or 3 times. You'll get an emulsification. All right, so now that you know a little bit more about the sizes of your die, you're going to see how that affects your end product. Something like a regular sausage, that's one time through the medium die. Something like a hot dog, an emulsified sausage, is going to be that progressive grind we were talking about, which is going to be multiple times through the small die with ice water. That's also for a product like Induya, which is a spreadable product. We don't generally use the larger coarse die for sausages. Again, it's mainly this medium size, and then for specialty stuff, the smaller plate. So this is just a general look at kind of what you can make. You saw the hams in the smoker. You can do that with just about any wild game. The bacon, obviously, that's example of cold smoking. You're not going to get that off of wild game. All these are different uses of casings, different flavorings, different levels of smoke and then grilled, emulsification, coarse, medium grind. So you can just kind of see an example of all the different things you can do. And again, you want to keep in mind your packaging, your end product, how you're going to end up packaging those. These are some examples of ways you can do that. So when you're twisting, measuring, doing all that, just kind of keep in mind what you have on hand to be able to package your end product. So if you're worried about your internal temperature and keeping it consistent, another trick is to use a immersion circulator. You can run a water bath at your desired internal temperature. That way you know everything's going to get up to where you need it to be evenly and consistently. All right, so you've just seen a really light introduction to the possibilities of sausage making and smoking meats. There's several different cultures utilize these techniques, so there's always different variations on the basic theme here. So once you learn the basics, you can really go anywhere with it. Highly encourage getting into it. Great way to utilize your wild game, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed.